Welcome to the Observeday podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. This September is National Recovery Month, a time to honor the resilience of those in recovery, to shine a light on the importance of support systems, and to explore the deep personal and spiritual transformation that come with healing. Today I'm joined by Jessica Morris, an author, poet, speaker, and spiritual director whose journey through addiction, faith, and healing has inspired so many. Her book, High Power, takes readers on a raw and vulnerable exploration of what it means to die to oneself, break free from the bondage of self, and discover a personal relationship with God. Jessica's honesty about trauma recovery and spirituality makes her a powerful voice for this month of reflection and renewal. Jessica, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
It's wonderful to be with you tonight, Wisdom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. Jessica, your story is quite peculiar in that you in your profile you mentioned that you had growing up you had an alcoholic and abusive father who was also a minister.
Yes.
Can you share with me what it was like growing up with such a father?
Yeah, you know what? It was difficult. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and there was a great deal of abuse in our home, but it was in our home. My dad was a minister, and my mom also was raised by an alcoholic, so she was very good at keeping the secrets. So anything that happened in our home was not discussed outside of the home. And so and my dad was a very good minister. I do believe he was really truly called to be a minister. And so he was good at his job. The people in his congregation and the people in our town loved him. And, so it was really confusing to me as a child, because he's my minister. And so I kind of think of him as God too, like that, when you're a little kid, the minister is sort of holy. And so I couldn't understand. I had this impression. My father also told me that I was a mistake, that he and my mom only wanted 3 children. And so I had this thought in my head, pretty much my whole life, that God thought I was a mistake. And so the best way I could sort of get rid of that was to drink it and eat it away. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was stuffing it down with food. And as soon as I started drinking pretty early. And I would say probably like 8th grade, freshman year in high school. And, it wiped away the sadness. It wiped away all of that sort of self-degradation that I lived with because I thought I was a mistake. And I had a good relationship with Jesus because, and this is going to sound crazy if you know anything about the Jesus story, when I was a kid, I felt like Jesus understood who I was because his dad abused him too. Like that's how I looked at it as a child, because God made Jesus come here and then he made him get beat up and then he made him die on the cross. That's how I saw it as a little kid. And so it was very confusing to me. However, it kept me connected. It kept me connected to Jesus because I knew he understood me. And so all the while that I was drinking and using food and relationships and all that kind of stuff, I was running from God, but I still loved Jesus. And I knew Jesus loved me. So there was always that sort of that voice in the back of my head that was like, we're right here. So it was constantly seeking after me, if that makes sense. Even when I was in my worst places, I can look back over many times and see where it saved me from myself.
You've been open about struggling with multiple addictions, and this is something you did not mention in the intro story. When did you first realize those patterns? One of the things you hinted at in the previous response was you started eating and drinking away the problems, right? When did you first realize those patterns? becoming a problem in your life?
Well, in looking back on all of it, I can see that I have used food probably from the time I was born. I mean, I have just been completely um, a slave to it. I don't even know how else to say it. Like I've been in shackles to food my whole life up until the time I got into recovery. I mean, if there was something sweet, if there was something greasy, it didn't matter what it was, I wanted to eat it. Or I was dieting to excess because once I got to the place where boys were concerned about what I looked like and, I wanted boys to like me, I started dieting a great deal. And so it became sort of this mind obsession where I was just completely focused on my body, what my body looked like, how much I could exercise in order to stay thin. So it was an absolute sort of whirlwind of obsession. Either I was eating compulsively and gaining a whole bunch of weight, or I was losing weight drastically and over exercising and trying to starve myself. I probably gained and lost the same 50 pounds. I don't even know how many times in my lifetime. And with alcohol, I remember my first drink because it was cough syrup. It was a homemade cough syrup that my mom made. It was three parts. It had one third honey, one third lemon juice, and one third of some kind of alcohol. I think it was whiskey or gin. I'm not sure. But it was a family remedy, and she used to keep it in the refrigerator. And I loved how it felt when I had a cough and she would give me a spoonful of that. And one time I just went to the refrigerator and drank a whole bunch of it.
Mm.
And I could feel it go down I could feel the warmth go down my whole body and I was hooked. I was hooked from there and I would rationalize it away. Like my dad when he drinks, he's a jerk, right?
I'm not a
I'm
jerk.
just having I'm just having fun, right? I'm just having a good time. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not beating anybody up. So they both, I would say that the food I'd been using my whole life, and the alcohol came in like around 8th or ninth grade, and it just got worse and worse. And if I was eating to excess, I wasn't drinking that much. If I was drinking to excess, I wasn't eating that
Yeah.
much. And it would just, they would play off of each other. And then you put boys in the middle of it. And then I just started to become obsessed with men and having a relationship and getting married. And it was just a train wreck. Let's just say it was a train wreck. My life was a train wreck.
Yeah. One of the things you just mentioned is that at the point in time you stare at the reflection in the mirror and you say, I have become that which I hated the most.
Yes.
And even though you want to justify and do all those things, you're like, nah.
Yeah, I have to say that it was hard seeing my sister, my eldest sister, who she's 6 years older than I am. She was the firstborn. And she was the one in the family who came to me and confronted me about my drinking. And that was about a year before I got into recovery. And she basically said to me, she said, I'm not going to watch you. I'm not going to sit by and watch you do to your life what our dad did to our family. And I was so angry at her because I was like, how dare you say that I'm like him? How dare you? And I
Yeah.
like pretty much threw her out of my apartment, and I know now in hindsight how hard that was for her. I'm so grateful that she did that.
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observeday newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
I'm so grateful she had the courage to be honest with me about it. But at the time I was so angry at her. And I knew she was right. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to admit it. It took me a whole nother year to actually get into recovery after that. But it started the ball rolling. It started the awareness from breaking through and making a crack in the darkness that I was living in, because it was very dark.
Yeah. Your elder sister reached out to you. You had those meaning points of reflection. But what was the actual turning point that led you to go into recovery? And not I'm not talking about the people giving advice. The point where you realize that enough is enough. I need to look for help.
Well, actually, it was kind of obnoxious and prideful to start. Um, After my sister said that to me, I thought to myself, I'll show her. I'm going to go to a counselor and I'm going to get some help with my life. And I was doing it to show her that I didn't
Yeah.
need it. And what happened while I was there was the counselor basically confronted me on my food, because I started to see her, and after I was seeing her for about a year, she said to me, you have a lot of problems. You have a lot of childhood issues, childhood trauma that we need to dig in and excavate that stuff. And she said, but none of it is ever going to none of the work we do is ever going to sink in with you until you get this food issue under control. Now, my sister had confronted me on my alcohol, and
Yeah.
now the counselor is confronting me on the food. And the food, and here's the deal, the food, I always knew I had a problem with food. I always knew that there was something different about me than other people. I just knew that inherently from the time I remember breathing, that I treated food differently than other people, and I could never talk about it with anybody. And so this counselor suggested I go to a recovery meeting, and I did that just to shut her up. Like that, I just kept doing things to shut people up. And when I knew for sure, and when the desperation set in, was when I was sitting in that first meeting and I was looking around the room, and these people were happy. They were happy. They liked their lives. They had the same story that I had, but they were in healthy bodies. They seemed joyful for the most part. I mean, some people were going through some struggles that night, but for the most part, they seemed happy. And I just was sitting there thinking, how how can they live their life happy if they're because I heard my story coming from their mouths, and I knew that I was in the right place. And I was just like, oh my God. I couldn't believe there were other so at first I was so happy because there were other people who did with food what I did with food.
Yeah.
But then but then I was like, "Oh my gosh, get me out of here." Like I can't I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand being in there. And as I was running out the door, because I really, when the meeting was over, I just tried to get out as fast as I could. And this woman came over to me, and she was an older woman. She probably could have been my mom, the age of my mom. And she just looked me dead in the face and she said to me, please come back. Please come back. And it was all I needed to hear. And I knew the following week I did what they said to me that week. What I heard in the meeting that week was sugar is the addictive substance for a food addict. And so you can't have any sugar. So that's all I did that week. I just didn't eat sugar that week. And I thought, this is easy. I can do this. And the following week, I had planned all day to go to the meeting. It was an
Yeah.
evening meeting. And I was sitting there having my dinner, and I thought to myself, this was really easy. You don't need to go back to that meeting. Like I had that thought, and then I had this thought. I literally do not hear things audibly in my ear, but it was like I heard a voice in my head, and it said, if you don't go back to that meeting, you're going to die.
Whew.
And I was like, okay. And I went back, and within a week after that, I asked somebody to guide me through the program, and I was off and running. And that was 26 years ago and 2 weeks. So it's been working for me ever since then, mainly because I'm showing up and doing the work. That's the part of recovery that's the most important. You actually have to do the work.
Yeah.
But it does, the rewards on the other end of it are just amazing.
Yeah. I'm curious, in the early days of recovery, it's very, very tough. Like tough is an understatement. How did you
Yes.
resist the urge to relapse or fall back into old patterns?
It was, you know what? I still say this today to everybody that I meet in recovery. Together we can. It's about reaching out to other people, asking for help, telling on myself. You know what I mean? When I have, there's a great, I'm gonna mess it up, but there's a great slogan. It's not a slogan. It's just a line that people say: "Never go into your mind. Your mind is like a bad neighborhood. You should never go in there alone, right?
Mm,
Because you're going to get beat up." And what I learned in early recovery was anytime that anything came up where I had to make a decision about food or alcohol or anything else, right? Or my surroundings, I call somebody. I pick up the phone and call somebody from the program. Now, this was way before cell phones. It was
yeah,
1999 when I went into the program. And so I'd have to like go find a payphone somewhere,
yeah,
and call people. But I didn't there I was so desperate at that point to feel better. I was just so desperate to feel better and to have a good life, because up until I was 29 years old and I had nothing. I had alienated my family. I had alienated my friends. I couldn't stand being around myself. And so all I really wanted was to just feel better. And so I just would call people or I would go to a meeting. I mean,
yeah,
depending on where you live, and today you can get meetings online. Back then you couldn't, but you know, you can go to a meeting 24/7 pretty much if you need to. And so, it's a matter of, for me, it was asking for help and being honest with myself first and
yeah.
then with other people, like telling the truth about what's really going on here.
Oh, hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. For me, it's clear that the desperate desire to become better was greater than the need to what's the word now? I was about to say substance. Yeah, alcohol substance too, right? Just that when I hear the
Yeah,
word substance, I always think of drugs.
Yeah.
But it was just greater, and I'm glad that you got all the support you needed, and I'm glad that one of the things I've noticed is that oftentimes we sabotage our own selves, right? The people are willing to support, but sometimes we don't even support ourselves, and for some reason, especially at the early days, uh, people are what's the word, ashamed. When they fall, they're like, I can't believe this happened, and what's the word, alienated, yeah, cut off from
Yes.
from the world. Nobody to help,
Yeah.
nobody to say, oh, you can do this, I believe in you, and it's just a question of spiraling into the neighborhood and eventually gets beaten up. Sometimes beaten up is an understatement. Sometimes it's the other way around,
Yeah.
mugged to death.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And too, I think the important thing for people to understand, if you've never experienced addiction yourself, or if you don't know somebody close to you who's had it, it's a disease. It's not anything to be ashamed of. It is a spiritual, emotional, mental, physical addiction, allergy, disease, whatever you want to call it. It is not like there was nothing. I mean, this is what I say to people. There was nothing inside of me that wanted to be 5'4" and almost 300 pounds.
Ooh,
Nothing. There was nothing inside of me. And everything in my head knew what I had to do in order for that to not happen. But I could not stop myself. No matter how much knowledge I had, no matter how uncomfortable I felt in my body, I could not stop myself from starting. And once I started, I couldn't stop. And so it's same with alcohol. I, I, I knew what would happen. My father was a great example of what would happen if I continued drinking that way. I couldn't stop myself from doing it. And so when someone I know in the program relapses or something, I always tell them first, there's nothing to be ashamed about. If you were a person who had cancer and you were in remission from your cancer and then it came back, would you shame yourself?
Of course not.
No, you'd go to the doctor and get the help you need.
Yeah.
And so we have to remember that, and that's why I still go to meetings. That's why I still work with other people in the program. That's why I still ask people for help, because I know I'm going to the grave with this thing. And as soon as I go into my mind by myself and I think that I can handle it, that's when I'm in the biggest trouble.
Yeah. Thank you for that advice. Thank you for um I feel like the question I was about to ask you next is uh okay, it's a little bit different, even though the response you
Okay.
just gave kind of answers it. But now I just want to respond to it. This month is about national recovery, and we're creating awareness, celebrating it, and also sharing people's story around it. What message would you share with someone who feels stuck, ashamed, or too broken to even begin, where they feel like they've passed the line, they've gone beyond help?
Mm. No. I would say no, you've not gone beyond help. It's never too late. It is never too late. I was 29 years old. I was lucky that I was blessed that I got in as early as I did. A lot of people come, later in life. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how low you feel you are. It doesn't matter, even if you think maybe I haven't had a low enough bottom yet.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, just show up. And the beautiful thing about recovery, if you find the right places, it doesn't cost a penny. You show up, maybe throw $1 in the basket, but for the most part, you can get help just from saying, "Hey, guess what? I need help."
Yeah.
And you're going to hear people share your story. It's never too late. I don't know if you're familiar with the story from the New Testament, that Jesus tells about the prodigal son.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know the story?
Another prodigal son.
I love that story, and it makes me think about recovery so much, because as soon as the son started to go back home, the father came running to him.
Yeah.
The father didn't even wait. The father didn't even wait for him to get all the way home. He just came running to him. And that's what I have seen in recovery, especially when someone comes back from relapse, the people there, they come running back to that person and they welcome them.
Yeah.
There's no shame in this at all. Shame is just a useless emotion. Just kick it to the curb. Just kick it to the curb and
Oh,
show up.
thank you so much, Jessica, for that advice. Where can listeners learn more about your work, your book, Higher Powered, and connect with you directly?
Yeah, you know what? My website has everything you could possibly need
Okay.
to know about me. I have another book actually, the higher powered is very heady. It's an extension of my thesis, my master's thesis. The first book that I wrote is called Dewdrops, and that's it's morning meditations for people who are experiencing recovery in any place,
Yeah.
and both of those books, you can find both of them on my website. It's just my name with my middle initial, jessicalmorris.com. And there's also information there. I have a blog there that you can subscribe to. And also information about spiritual direction, and speaking and all that kind of stuff. So anything you need, you can even contact me through the website if you want.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I'll add all the links mentioned in the description and the show notes so listeners can click and go direct to the site. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you, Jessica.
Thank you, Wisdom. It's been wonderful for me too. Thank you so much.
Yeah. That's it for today's episode of the Observeday podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.